Hi, today we're going to solve the fourth passage on the March 2020 SAT test. This, as we can understand through the blurb, is a history passage. So we're going to move directly to the questions once again. Looking for a line reference question, which is my second question. The image of the child just learning to walk, line 7, mainly serves to. So this is a role played or function question. Therefore, we have to read quite a bit in order to understand what is the function of this bit in respect to the rest of the passage. So, but though the connection was now dissolved and the Gordian knot of union between Great Britain and America cut in sunder, though the independence of the United States was, by the treaty, clearly established on the broad basis of liberty, yet the Americans felt themselves in such a state of infancy that as a child just learning to walk, they were afraid of their own movements. Their debts were unpaid, their governments unsettled, and the people out of breath by their long struggle for the freedom and independence of their country. So, here we have a nation which is just learning how to go about things. Characterize the United States' decision to seek independence from Great Britain as juvenile. Well, that's pretty strong. There is no such indication. Emphasize the inexperience of Americans in navigating their new political position. Good answer. Could definitely be one. Acknowledge the naivete of Americans in believing in an equitable. Okay, naivete is again quite strong. This is not really judging the Americans for seeking independence. Criticize the United States' attempts to become isolated. United States never actually became isolated. B is my answer, and we move on to our next question, which would be 41, is used in line 48. Secure most nearly means. So let's look at 48. These they had freely lavished to secure their equality of condition, their easy modes of subsistence, and their exemption from public burdens beyond the necessary demands for the support of a free and equal government. Okay. So to ensure, and looking at the answer choices that we do have here, guarantee looks close to ensure. Guarantee looks like an answer choice that's pretty close to my prediction, which is ensure, fasten, promise, or control do not match. Therefore, guarantee is my answer. And then we can move on to our paired questions. So let's look at 37 and 38. In the passage, Warren characterizes Americans of the post-Revolutionary War period as. So how have the Americans been classified or characterized? Let's look at lines 19 and 24. So we've got to look at the lines between 19 and 24. Or whether such, if established, would be administered agreeable to laws founded on the beautiful theory of republicanism, depictured in the closets of philosophers and idolized in the imagination of most of the inhabitants of America. All right. Idealistic, definitely. Naive, there was no indication of the same, so I really don't find a match. We're going to move on to 25. Reading till 28. It is indeed true that from a general attention to early education, the people of the United States were better informed in many branches of literature than the common classes of men in most other countries. Okay. Again, there is no match. One may want to choose learned and cultured here, but learned and culture has very little to do with early education or only with many branches of literature. Early education simply means primary education. That's not enough to be classified as learned, and culture neither is only literature as a subject, although many branches of literature has been mentioned. Moving on to 30 to 35. Mankind, they were ignorant of the intrigues of courts, and though convinced of the necessity of government, did not fully understand its nature or origin. Okay, they did not fully understand. They generally supposed there was little to do but to shake off the yoke of foreign domination and annihilate the name of king, right? So this looks like a good match with A, because they do not fully understand, so naive and idealistic, because all they wanted to do was to get rid of the king. Moving on to 62, reading up to 69. Than a possession of real stability, it may be acquired today in all the triumph of independent feelings, but perhaps tomorrow the world may be convinced that mankind know not how to make a proper use of the prize, generally bartered in a short time, as a useless bauble to the first officious master, that'll take the burden from the mind by laying another on the shoulders of tenfold weight. Alright. Does that have a match? Not really. So my answers would be C and A. And I'm going to move on to the next pair. Which choice provides the best evidence that after the war, Americans wanted a political system that did not require much of them? 39 to 44. They were not sensible that from age to age the people are flattered, deceived, or threatened, until the hoodwinked multitude set their own seals to a renunciation of their privileges, and with their own hands rivet the chains of servitude on their prosperity. Does that look like the Americans wanted a political system that did not require much of them? It actually does not. So now we're going to move on to our next line reference question, and 40 looks like one that we could solve. So which choice provides the best evidence that after the war, Americans wanted a political system that did not require much of them? So political system that could exist by itself. Let's look at 39 to 44. Okay, please cut this part. So we're going to look at 39 to 44 here. They were not sensible that from age to age the people are flattered, deceived, or threatened, until the hoodwinked multitude set their own seals to a renunciation of their privileges, and with their own hands rivet the chains of servitude on their prosperity. Okay. This definitely doesn't look like one that wouldn't require much of them. Moving on to 48 to 52. These they had freely lavished to secure their equality of condition, their easy modes of subsistence, and their exemption from public burdens. Exemption, okay. Beyond the necessary demands from the support. Okay, so basically they can exist by themselves, because beyond the necessary demands for the support of a free and equal government, they could actually exist by themselves. This does look like a viable answer choice. Moving on to 55. Reading till 57. New created exigencies or more splendid modes of government that might hereafter be adopted had not yet come within the reach of their calculations. Again, does not really say much. Looking at 80 to 85. Thus, by habit, they are ready to believe that mankind in general are incapable of the enjoyment of that liberty which nature seems to prescribe, and that the mass of the people have not the capacity nor the right to choose their own masters. Again, out of scope. Therefore, my answer would be B here. And we're going to move to 42. In the last paragraph, Warren states that rulers are appointed through deceptive means and by. Okay, so one of the ways would be deceptive means, and what's the other method? So this is my last paragraph. Usual course of human conduct, however painful, reflection may be to the patriot in retirement, to the philosopher absorbed in theoretic disquisitions on human liberty, or the portion of natural and political freedom to which man has a claim. The game of deception is played over and over to mislead the judgment of men, okay, and work on their enthusiasm until their own consent, hereditary crowns and distinctions are fixed, and some sign of royal descent is entailed upon them forever. As by habit they are ready to believe that mankind in general are incapable of the enjoyment of that liberty which nature seems to prescribe, and that the mass of the people have not the capacity nor the right to choose their own masters. All right. Looking at the answer choices promising economic equality, again, this is like a trap. Even if you hadn't kind of read this passage, this is what your common sense would tell you, and those sort of answer choices are usually traps. On the SATs, you can eliminate the same. Persuasive ideologies of philosophers, again, trap. This is like a word which has been recycled from the paragraph, which does not match the sense. Bartering with other political leaders, out of scope. Compliance with the public, yes, because the people themselves are the ones who make these decisions. Consent, you see. Moving on to the next question that we can answer. Warren claims that there is a historical pattern of governance that should serve as a warning to Americans, and that the most successful governments, again, we already found the answer to this one in the last paragraph, are reluctant to impose constraints on their citizens but actively censor any public criticism. There was really nothing about censoring. And then unable to discontinue policies enforced by their, nothing about previous leaders either. Enabled by their citizens' blind trust to act without oversight. Without oversight, that sense wasn't there. Willing to use treachery or intimidation to maintain their position of power. Yes, we already read that bit. Now, Warren implies that after Americans won independence, they questioned whether they would be. So by this point, again, you're expected to have read the passage, and you should be able to answer these questions relatively quickly. Forced to rejoin, so use your process of elimination tools heavily at this point. Forced to rejoin with Great Britain to secure their financial future. Completely out of scope. Able to return to the occupations they held. Out of scope again. Able to create a political system that appeases all citizens. Well, looks like an answer beholden to other countries. None of that was there, so C is my answer. Moving on to 36. Warren contrasts Americans' knowledge of different areas of study with their unworldly view of. So, basically, they do not have a view of it. Popular culture, they do have a view of the same because they were great at different branches of literature, human nature. Well, they did not really understand their politicians, so could be an answer. Education in other countries. Trap, recycled again, because education has been mentioned. Theories of democracy, out of scope. Human nature would be my answer here. 33. Over the course of the passage, the main focus shifts from an analysis of the difficulties facing Americans to a reflection on the repercussions of a human characteristic. I really don't understand this answer just by first reading, so I'm going to hold on to it because I do not have time to, try and understand answer choices at this point. Moving on to B. A warning about America's government to a critique of, well, that wasn't there. Description of America's education system to, well, this was not about education system and philosophy, it was just a part. Recollection of the end of the war to a recommendation that Americans implement a democratic system. Was there a recollection of the end of the war? Or a recommendation of the implementation? There was just a critique of how things were about to be done. Therefore, my answer would be A, an analysis of the difficulties facing Americans to a reflection. Yes, we know about the difficulties on second read, about how they were going to go about their political structures, and institutions, a reflection on the repercussions of human characteristic, understanding their political leaders. So that's how you can go about a historical passage. That means a history passage. So one of the things that we, got from this passage, unlike the others, is that when we have to deal with our role-played or our function-based questions or evaluate, any of these words could have been used here. Ensure that you read slightly more in order to understand what the, purpose of this bit is, in contrast to the structure of the rest of the passage. And other than that, do ensure that you go ahead and solve all the line reference questions first, so you can then come back and solve the more general questions later. Again, if these videos are helping you to try and understand how to best go about your SAT passages, do like, share, and subscribe to our page so we can work on more videos to help you ace the SAT. Have a great day.